In the last tutorial, we took a look at using Photoshop to design wireframes or prototypes or mock-ups or whatever you want to call them. Here I'm actually backtracking just a little bit with a wireframe because it's a great sample that I found, and I wanted to look at exporting to pages and creating interactivity with these documents. Now this is just going to be using a wireframe version of it, but that's fine. It still will give us the same exact skills. So the very first thing that we're going to do is begin by opening it up in Photoshop. So let's open up a file in Photoshop and take a look. In the last tutorial, we took a look at using Photoshop with layer comps and layers for some strategies for prototyping or creating mock-ups of websites. Now, we're going to be looking at creating interactivity between the pages in this tutorial, but I'm going to be using a wireframe because it's a really nice one that I found that has all the different pages that we might want to create some interactivity with. Now we're going to be using a skill that's not very commonly used in Photoshop much anymore, but we're also going to look at using Dreamweaver to kind of do the same thing. So with this first method, let's take a look at Photoshop because we were doing that before. I'm going to open up this first PNG in Photoshop, and what I'm going to do is create slices in order to output these different buttons for pages. Now a slice in Photoshop hasn't been done in a long time. This was very common when we created websites back in the 90s and early 2000s, but we don't use it a whole lot. But it can be really great for creating some idea of interactivity. Now with creating slices, you want to be really accurate about the way that they're created. So I'm going to go ahead and make my first slice, and the reason I'm saying you want to be pretty accurate is that you want them to align to each other because you want as few slices as possible. So I've made one for archive and about. Then I'll come over here to blog and make one last one for store. Now I'm actually making it so it goes beyond that other thing right here. It's actually going to what would be the full width basically. Now we can also make it for other elements as well. Maybe we make one for this icon that's here in the middle, and you'll see that slices like to cut into each other, or they like to align with each other quite a lot. So I'm also going to make another one that I just started here, and let me zoom out. And I'm actually making this around the content, and the reason why is because you'll notice that this slice continues all the way down the page, and I'm going to break that up so that this slice, whoops, I want to be able to actually move that slice. There we go. Now it's a little bit hard when we're on the slice tool itself, so we can kind of just make our slices and then use what's called the slice edit tool, and that is the next tool down, or slice select tool. Now you can see I've created slices now. I've sliced up this content and I've got basically my navigation up here. Now it's made some other slices and you'll see they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what we're going to do is actually give these slices a few names. For example, this is archive. So if I double click on it with the slice select tool, it'll come up and I can say archive and even do button or something like that, so I know that that's going to be the archive button. This will go to a page called archive.htm. And we can do alt tags and as well if you want. You can, just to cover all the different bases, you can go ahead and give the message text and the alt tag the same thing, but it doesn't really matter for what we're doing. So then I'll go to the next one and I'll do about underscore button, and that will go to about.htm. And then we go on for the rest. This one might go ahead and call that content home. This one down here I'm going to call footer, just so we know exactly what's what. Now that I've got my basic slices made, we can start to output our HTML. Now, once again, I should point out this really isn't done a whole lot anymore to actually design websites, but it's great to give you just a chance at some simple interactivity in Photoshop. So we use Save for the Web as the output, and one of the things you can note is that you can choose different types of file formats for your different files for outputting your slices. You just click on a slice and change what you want for that one. So these could be GIF images, and you'll see that it remembers which one I'm currently on. Since we're just doing this for demonstration purposes, everything to a PNG is just fine. The next thing we're going to do is do save, and it's going to come up with this window. And this is really what we need to be aware of. Typically, you might just output your images only or HTML only, but we're going to do HTML and images. And it doesn't really matter what settings of our XHTML. You can go into there and actually customize your XHTML a little bit if you really want to worry about it. But I'm not going to worry too much. I've got all slices, default settings, HTML and images, and I'm going to call this home page, since this is the home page that's being output. And of course, it does matter where we've chosen to save those files. So I know mine's in some sort of crazy temp directory. So I'm going to go to that temp directory and find it. And there it is. Now, the images that I've output, there's going to be a lot of them. You'll see that it's output the about underscore button.png and the archive underscore button, the footer, and that would have been the logo had I named it, and here's the content, and then of course the other buttons. Now you'll notice that they just came up with the default slice name unless you give them an actual name. Well, this doesn't really matter too much because really what I'm after is this, the HTML. If I double click on that HTML, it will come up as a page. Now I can actually click on Archive or click on About, and it would actually load up those pages. So what's nice about this is that I can do a couple little things with some simple code. Now, if you don't have Dreamweaver, you can use something like Notepad++, which is nice and free. But I do want to point out that the code that comes up is all tables. And tables are pretty old school. We don't use them much anymore. And you'll even see it has a comment in here that says it was sliced from this file. So one of the things that we might do is just a little bit of cleanup to maybe make this thing float in the center. So I'll do an inline style, which is not common, but it's on the table itself. And I'll say style equals margin 0 auto. This will center that table on the page. And now the other thing that I'm looking for is the one that is the content. It's somewhere in here. So here's content home. Now what that means is that I might be able to go to a different page. If I go back to my original, I might be able to say, well, on this one I'd like to output just that content. I could even crop it in XNView and export a PNG to where I want to. And let's see, I know that's on the temp folder in the new folder, images. So this is going to be the, sorry about the jump there, it's actually going to be called content-blog. And then of course I'm going to need another one here. So let's find the other one that I need. One of these says archive. There's about, so I'd know I made the about. So I'd make one for about here. I'll slice that up. Export. And that's going to be content-about. And where is that archive? I think that's the archives. So I'd make that one the archive. Now I think I've already made one here, content archive. Yep, but I can just replace it. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the folder where we've output our images, and we'll just check, make sure we have those. Now we have our content, about, archive, blog, and home. So we have our different content pages, and we have our original HTML. Now I do want to point out I made a mistake on the HTML, and that's why I actually had to remake these tutorials. So a couple of things that I note that I want to fix. Number one is when comping, make sure that you actually are linking to the right files. I had named these archive.htm versus HTML. So we just have to fix either one. We have to add the L's to our code, or we have to take off the L on our page. It doesn't really matter. I added the L's just because that's the way I was thinking at the time. Now the other thing that I want you to be aware of is that we want to clear the heights of two things. We want to clear the height of our table, and of course I added the style margin 0 auto so that it would center. And then I want to clear the height on the content as well, on that content slice. And the reason why is we want those to be automatically calculated. Now I can actually start saving out my different pages. Now I'm going to do save a copy, and I'm going to call this about. And I'd hit save, and I'd change that to content about. So let me save that again. Oh no! Let me save. I did save as, and I forgot the fact that then I have to open up that page after I save as. It's a little bit different in Notepad. So anyway, here's the about.html page. Now I'm going to go find that content and change it to about. Now if I change this to archive, now I can do file, save as, archive. So now I've created all the different pages. There we go. So I've got about, archive, and home page. One other thing I should point out that I never did do, although it would have been smart, is if I knew which one the logo was, which I don't have here, I would link that to the home page. Because right now I don't have a way to get back to the home page. Anyway, I've now created basically an interactive walkthrough of this website. I can click on archive and it will go to that. I can click on about and it will go to that. So this is a very simple way of creating what feels and looks like an actual web page. Of course, had I been using a real prototype of the website, then it would be colorful and it would actually look more like the actual website than this kind of grayscale version. But you kind of get the point. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's what you can do with it. Now, I have a sample of this that was done by somebody else, and they haven't really linked everything yet, but here's an example of it. They've got kind of less elegant names here, but let's just say call that Home 1. I'll do that, and then this will be Home 2, Home 3. So with the first one, here's what it kind of looks like, and they've got the page design, but the problem is that you can't go to the next page. So let's just cheat and make it so that anytime you click on that home page, it will go. So all I have to do is add an anchor tag. And by the way, I love Notepad++. One of the things that you can do is you can select text, and with what's called the web edit, I can just wrap that by clicking on that tag, and now it just gives me a really easy way to do it. So this will be home2.htm, or let's see, what did we call that? home2.htm. Perfect. Now when I go to Home 2, I'll select that image, and that will go to Home 3. So that's a really simple way of creating interactivity between the pages as well. I can just click on one page and go to the next, and then go to the next. Now this particular one, I wanted to point out, of course we're going to do this and go to the next page as well. This one right here is done, and it actually has an interactive part that's done next, which happens to be that one. So I'll call that Home 4. And I can't remember which page that is, but I'll just call it About. So with Home 3, we're going to have it go to Home 4. So we do the same process as before. Select that, wrap that tag. That'll go to home4.htm. And let's take a look at Home 4. Home 4 has made it a little bit different. It's added some jQuery and stuff, and it's made some slices, which were very much like what we did before. But what it did was it sliced it up so that it's got the bottom and the top. Whoops, there's the top and the bottom. And then it's got slices for the slides that are done in the middle so that it can create kind of a jQuery slider type look of it. And so here's what we get with that. We can go to the second slide, we can go to the third slide, we can go to the fourth slide, and it actually has a jQuery slider for that in particular element. And that's kind of nice, just so we can get a feeling of the interactivity, but nothing else is interactive at all. Now, what about if we wanted to create some interactivity with these instead of just clicking on the page itself? Because that's kind of somewhat inelegant, especially when we get to Home 4, because at this point we're really saying that, hey, we actually have an internal page called About Us that we'd want to go to and show what that would look like. So I'm going to open up that home page 4 with Dreamweaver instead, and the reason why is because this way I can create what's called an image map. Now I could have done this at the beginning as well. I've already got some slices in here, so I'm using some sliced up graphics. Let's go to Design View. And you'll notice that right now I've got some slices in here. So I'm going to actually have that one go to my About page. So in order to create a slice using a image map, all we have to do is go to the Image Map tool after we've selected an image and draw an image. Let's say draw a hotspot around what we want to click on. Now I'll do a link for that. Let's see what that link is going to be. It's going to be the About page. Is that correct? Yeah. So I'll just put in that code. About. Now the alt tag could be about as well if you want, just to make sure that it has an alt tag. And I can make it fit that whole side if we need. Now you'll notice that this has that big content slice just like we did before, so we could exchange these out if we wanted to do kind of the same thing that we did in Photoshop but in Dreamweaver, and we can create just a little bit of interactivity with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up the About page. Whoops, let's make sure I'm on the right one. And I'll open that with Dreamweaver as well. You'll see this one is just a big old image, so it doesn't have the slices in the middle, so I just have to go ahead and then maybe make this logo go back to home. And that's Home 4, I believe. So let's take a look. Now, when I come to this one, let me start off with the first one. First one just links to the second one. The second one links to the third one. The third one links to this fourth one, where we have a little bit more going on, including an interactive slider and the ability to click on pages like the About page. Now the About page allows me to link back to the logo, to the home page, so I can go between those pages. Now there are some design things that have changed, obviously. That's not something that you would want with your design, but just for demonstration purposes, hopefully you get the idea. And making slices and image maps in Dreamweaver is a really easy thing. If you want to keep this more organized, I definitely suggest that you do manage a site so that you can manage the files a little bit more efficiently. But this should give you a good introduction to being able to create some basic interactivity. I do want to point out one thing though, and that is that Fireworks actually is awesome at doing this as well. And the reason it's so great at doing this is that it's integrated into the tool. The problem with Fireworks is that it's going away after Fireworks CS6. So this isn't going to be the way to do things in the future very often. What we're showing is kind of old school anyway. But Fireworks has the ability for you to have pages and link between pages. For example, I'm going to create a new document, and it doesn't really matter what I have here, but we have that, and if we have pages, if I created another page and another page, you'll notice that I have different content on the different pages, and that's it. So now if I go to the slice tool, I can actually create a slice. So I'm on page 1. When I create this slice, I'm going to link that slice. Whoops, I need to go back to that black arrow. I'm going to link that slice actually over to a different page. Whoops, looks like I have to do something else with it. Link. I have to do it down here. So that will be going to page 2. Now when I'm on page 2, this will be a link. And that will link to page 3. So of course, if this was a title or something like that, then it could be a little bit more consistent. This actually allows me to do a rectangular hotspot, which is the same thing as an image map. And we can actually link to different pages as well. So that's kind of cool, just another way of doing it. Playing with slices, and actually even better, probably hotspots in Fireworks is another way that you can get the same sort of interactivity thing going. And if you have all your design in pages in Fireworks, then you can get that same output as well when you do File, Export, and then choose to export as HTML. So if you use HTML in images, you'll get all those different pages and interactivity between them all from one application. So it's a really nice way of designing the websites, the prototypes, having the pages, and outputting the interactivity. So I know that's a lot to throw at you, but hopefully you'll get something out of this and do some cool website prototypes. Thanks.